Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we gotta revisit the assassination of the United Healthcare CEO because many people are in support of this individual. There are disgusting videos of people getting tattoos commemorating this brutal murder, and as many of you have told me in the comments, it's not just those on the left wing that are supporting this murder. There's enough people on the right wing in my own audience that are also in support of this. So this is the time where I decide to double down on the fact that this is totally immoral. And to be clear, I don't give a damn if that angers people out there in my audience, because I happen to be 100% right and you happen to be 100% wrong. Now we're going to get into this, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
So there's been a vocal minority of people on the internet.com that have been praising this killing of this CEO. A bunch of people cheering it on, talking about how it's a good thing, celebrating it. We saw ridiculous things like a costume contest where people dressed as this shooter prior to him being captured. And of course, when he was captured via a tip from a McDonald's employee, that McDonald's ended up getting a bunch of one-star reviews and getting attacked by the broader internet. But it turns out we do have some polling from the general population on how they feel about this, and except for young people in the demographic of 18 to 29, it appears the majority of Americans understand that murdering somebody because you want to change a political system is not appropriate behavior. So we're going to jump into that Emerson poll, but I'm also going to talk about a bunch of other efforts that I think are completely ineffective in trying to explain the immorality of this to people who honestly do not give a damn about immorality. So according to this Emerson College poll, 68% of voters reject the killer's actions. However, young voters and Democrats are more split. 41% of voters 18 to 29 find the actions of the killer acceptable. 24% say somewhat acceptable, and that breaks down to 24% somewhat acceptable and 17% to completely acceptable. While 40% find them unacceptable, 22% of Democrats find them acceptable, while 59% of them find it unacceptable. This compares to 12% of Republicans and 16% of independents who find the actions acceptable, underscoring the shifting societal attitudes among the youngest in the electorate within party lines, according to Kimball. Men are slightly more inclined to find the actions acceptable compared to women. 19% said the actions were acceptable compared to 14% of women. And you can actually see this spread out over a chart by age, because this is really what people are harping on. I'm not sorry to say this, but this is terrible news. It is a blight on the morality of young people in the United States of America. And like many of things that we discover throughout the polling of the citizens of this country, it turns out that the people least negatively impacted by the health insurance system, which are young people, find this murder the most acceptable by demographic. This is very reminiscent, in my opinion, of how if you make over $100,000 a year, you are far more likely to support initiatives like defunding the police, while black people, who supposedly were trying to protect by defunding the police, according to the left wing, did not support it. In fact, it was only 19% support, and the overwhelming majority of black people supported either funding police at similar levels or increasing police funding. And this is not surprising. It's because, as we've seen time and time again, young people seem to be completely off in their morality. These are the same people that try to police your language. When you poll them, they say that they don't support freedom of speech if the speech is offensive, meaning that they don't support freedom of speech. And I think this is a disaster going down the line, because these are the people that are theoretically going to be the future of this nation, and they clearly and obviously have a completely different set of moral values than the majority of us. That being said, young people are disproportionately more online, so probably the reason why there's so much pro-murder content in favor of this guy is because they happen to be overrepresented on the internet. But I find this to be very unfortunate, because obviously, or it should be obvious, that murder is not an effective way to get get the political change that you want. I mean, again, people talk about how United Healthcare denies 31% of claims or whatever the number is, but the fact of the matter is, nobody's claim was undenied due to the fact that this person was killed. All this was a murder, and this is going to lead to more isolation of executives as they scramble in order to secure themselves, but it's not going to produce the political change that you want. In addition to that, if you guys will remember when Obamacare was being pushed, they had a guy that was considered the architect of Obamacare, after it was passed, go out and say to the public that he was basically dependent on the stupidity of the American voters to redirect their anger in all manner of issues from the government to insurance companies in order to get that law passed. Let me play you some of those sound bites that are going viral again now.
It's just, you can't do it politically. You just literally cannot do it. Okay? Transparent financing, unless I have transparent financing, also transparent spending. I mean, this bill was written in a tortured way to make sure CBO did not score the mandate as taxes. If CBO scored the mandate as taxes, the bill dies. Okay? So it's written to do that. In terms of risk-rated subsidies, if you had a law which said healthy people are going to pay in, it made explicit that healthy people pay in and sick people get money, it would not have passed. Okay? Just like lack of transparency is a huge political advantage. And basically, call it the stupidity of the American voter or whatever. But basically, that was really, really critical to getting the thing to pass. And, it's the second best argument. Look, I wish Mark was right. We can make it all transparent. But I'd rather have this law than not.
And another Massachusetts hero, John Kerry, or more likely his staff, came up with a great substitute idea. They said, look, what you economics nerds want to do is you want to say that for people with expensive health insurance plans, they will no longer get a 40% tax break. What if we instead just levied a 40% tax on the insurance companies that sell these terrible expensive Cadillac plans? We said, well, that's pretty much the same thing. So why does it matter? I said, you'll see. And they were posted, and that passed. Because the American voter is too stupid to understand the difference. Okay? So basically...
Until a second Massachusetts hero arose, John Kerry. And John Kerry said, no, we're going to tax your health insurance. We're going to tax those evil insurance companies. We're going to impose a tax that if they sell health insurance that's too expensive, we're going to tax them. And conveniently, the tax rate will happen to be the marginal tax rate under the income tax code. So basically, it's the same thing. We just tax the insurance companies. They pass it on higher prices. That offsets the tax break we get. It ends up being the same thing. So a very clever, basically exploitation of the lack of economic understanding of the American voter.
Look, I hate to agree with somebody like that you can rely on the stupidity of the American voter to redirect your anger to inappropriate places, but the fact of the matter is, what he said is at least proving out to be true among the younger demographics who are fully on board with this murder despite the fact that it doesn't accomplish anything, and clearly and obviously this was not self-defense in any way. Now, there are a bunch of different articles that talk about how this Minnesota man who became the CEO, Brian Thompson, grew up on a farm and he worked his way up to the CEO, and you compare and contrast that to Luigi Mangione, who grew up incredibly wealthy, incredibly privileged, but honestly, I don't think these are effective arguments because the fact of the matter is a lot of people are anti-health insurance companies, anti-United Healthcare, and there are some reasons for that, some legitimate reasons for that. But again, this does nothing to accomplish the mission that is vaguely defined by many of these people. And I'm speaking specifically to the right wing because what do you want the solution to be? At least on the left wing, they say that they want a government-run healthcare system. Now, this does not move the ball at all to the government-run healthcare system, but at least they have a goal. But for the right, you're essentially saying that it's okay to murder people on the way to the left-wing utopia, which I find to be asinine and ridiculous. And considering that so many of you left comments under my video expecting me to somehow go soft on this, I don't understand what channel you think you're watching. I've said time and time again that I do not justify or support murder in any context. I've repeated it on this channel, and we often mock the rationale by all these different various people that, oh, they were just put in a position where they needed to do this because of their sad sack life. How is justifying Luigi Mangione any different than the district attorneys that pander to the criminals and say, oh my God, their life was so hard, especially when you consider that Luigi Mangione's life was objectively not that hard. Sure, he had some back problems while he was vacationing in Hawaii. He injured himself surfing, but the idea idea that that is a normal, rational response to that is absurd. Apparently, he might not have even had United Healthcare. He just decided that he wanted to make a statement, and I'm not on board for his statement. Like I said, I think the solution to medical care in the United States of America is rooted in the fact that people don't understand the problem. People expect health insurance to pay for everyday ordinary medical expenses, when in reality, insurance is supposed to protect you against financial loss or great financial loss for things that are unpredictable. Yet in our system, because we have stupid politicians, because we have a bunch of different people with their grubby hands all over it, insurance is expected to pay for your ordinary regular doctor's visits, your medications that are commonplace, and of course, they're supposed to cover all these dramatic procedures that cost a bunch of money. This is completely contrary to the insurance model, and as we see time and time again, the more the government meddles in that system, the more you get crazy, ridiculous outcomes. For instance, as an unintended consequence of them not being able to ban people for pre-existing conditions, what you ended up with is a bunch of these insurers working with, and by the way, ProPublica actually worked on this piece recently related to autistic kids, offshoot companies that are basically pulling the doctors that you would need out of network. So they're not technically denying you for pre-existing conditions, but they're actually denying you because these people are out of network. And because of this, because of the third-party payer system, prices go up dramatically for these everyday ordinary services. And it just doesn't make any sense. And people have pointed this out for years and years and years. And the idea that Luigi Mangione has some special insight onto our system is betrayed by his own words. This guy actually cited life expectancy as a negative side of our healthcare system, when in reality, we're not using, when we talk about life expectancy, a measurement that measures the outcome of the healthcare system. There are three things that drive down United States life expectancy that have almost nothing to do with the medical system. The first is murder and suicides. The second is car accidents, because we drive way more than any other country. We also have a higher homicide rate, not a higher suicide rate than almost any other Western country. And of course, overdoses. And while you could talk about overdoses in relation to the medical system, the fact of the matter is the overdoses are not fueled by denying people medication. In fact, they were fueled by flooding the market with prescription medication, specifically prescription opioids, that cause a huge portion of the American population to become addicted to said opioid. But more troubling in my mind, beyond the fact that people are supporting the assassination of an individual who's shot in the back early in the morning on the streets of Manhattan, is that there is no limiting principle right here, because we understand that this killing is going to produce no change at all whatsoever. We understand that the healthcare system is going to keep on trucking the way that it is, and this is due in large part to the fact that politicians aren't going to change these laws in any effective way in order to make the healthcare system better. But because we don't actually have any limiting principle behind this, what's to stop somebody from being a copycat and targeting the person who personally denied their claims? It's revenge. It's supposedly justified. Apparently, not paying for somebody is the equivalent to killing people in a lot of these people's minds. So anybody in the chain of command in any of these health insurance companies is open season, under the rationale that it doesn't matter if this actually changes anything, but these ridiculous revenge killings are just justified because you don't like the healthcare system all that bad. In addition to that, what's to stop this from expanding to politicians? I mean, many of people were outraged when on July 13th of this year, President Donald J. Trump was shot. But the fact of the matter is, if that person's motivation was revealed to be over the healthcare system, over the fact that he's angry that Trump won't do anything to change the healthcare system for a positive, I'm guessing many of you, not just on the left, as a lot of you told me in the comments, would have to jump on board with that, because that would be somebody actually in a position of power, somebody that could actually do something related to this, that would have been killed in the name of your utopia, or of the left-wing utopia. I'm sorry, but no, this is not the way a proper country, a proper moral population should engage in politics. And again, if we move past the politicians that are not doing anything in order to secure your healthcare, why don't we talk about other CEOs of other industries? I mean, if somebody said, oh, the CEOs of these gun companies are profiting off of gun gun violence in the United States of America, so we need to take him out for that. I'm guessing many of you on the right would be against that, but people on the left would endorse that because that falls basically within their parameters. Again, we talk about abortion. Planned Parenthood CEO, this is a company that profits off of abortion. That is the primary service that they offered. Is it okay to target them if you're on the left wing? Is it okay to target regular, ordinary abortion doctors? I think the answer is no in all of this. I think you don't preemptively or revenge murder anybody in order to try to produce the political change that you want. But for some reason, this is a hard pill to swallow, pun intended, for many of you out there, even in my own audience.
Announced that Luigi Mangione, the defendant, is charged with 1 count of murder in the first degree and 2 counts of murder in the second degree, including 1 count of murder in the second degree as an act of terrorism for the brazen, targeted, and premeditated shooting of Brian Thompson, who, as you know, was the CEO of United Healthcare.
Now, there's also a lot of outrage online in the fact that Luigi Mangione was charged with terrorism or its first-degree murder with the terrorism enhancement, and you have all these different people talking about how, oh, this person or that person wasn't charged with terrorism, but all of a sudden, when you kill a CEO, you get that charge. And what's amazing about this is that many of these cases don't involve the state of New York, so they wouldn't fall under the same jurisdiction. And when they try to cite instances like the Buffalo shooter, not only was he charged with the terrorism enhancement for every single one of the murders that he committed, but he was convicted of the murder with the terrorism enhancement. He actually pled guilty to those counts. So it's just not real. It's not true. It's false, but it's all meant to gin up a hysteria related to this topic, which is rather unfortunate because there are things in the healthcare system that should be changed, or that could be changed for the better, but we're not going to achieve that by praising this murderer. It's an absurdity to think that this guy had license to do this because you didn't like this particular individual. And again, people are going to talk about how he was under investigation for insider trading or this or that related to United Healthcare. I don't give a damn about that. The punishment for that is not being shot in the back on the streets of Manhattan by some overprivileged brat who was upset about his back pain, again, that he hurt while surfing in Hawaii. Now, another thing that people tried to point out as a justification for his actions, as a positive change for his actions, is that Anthem, Blue Cross Blue Shield decided that they were going to pull back their anesthesia policy, and they said, look, that is positive change. Thank God that Taylor Lorenz, who had joy related to this guy's murder, the United Healthcare CEO,
I do believe in the sanctity of life, and I think that's why I felt, along with so many other Americans, joy, unfortunately, because it feels like...
Serious?
I mean...
Joy in a man's execution?
Maybe not joy, but certainly not empathy.
Tweeted out her name and face so that she could be targeted, but the fact of the matter is, that was also stupid. You see, as highlighted in my previous video, the reason that Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield was trying to put this restriction on anesthesia is because the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Studies, which by the way is a government-run institution, also was coming after the anesthesiologists due to the fact that they were overcharging by their estimation for their services. And in fact, one of the tricks that they would use in order to charge you, the regular individual, is that you would go to an in-network surgeon. You would get your procedure and think that it's 100% covered. But during the course of your surgery, they would have contracted out an out-of-network anesthesiologist who would then end up coming in, and then your insurance and you would end up having to fight over who was going to pay for it. So what they tried to limit in this particular instance, what Medicare and Medicaid tried to limit before them that nobody got outraged about, was those practices, was anesthesiologists ripping you off. Now, should we target the head of the Anesthesiologists Association for this practice that they were defending, for their propaganda, in order to get that to be a practice that continues? Absolutely not. But it just goes to show you that it's a complex system. It's not just the insurance. It's not as simple as they denied this percentage of claims, therefore they're killing this percentage of their customers. Remember, if you got into an accident or something like that, or more likely if you got shot on the streets as an example, or had a heart attack or whatever, and you end up going into an ambulance, you end up landing at the hospital, and they cover everything that has to do with your surgery. However, they decline your ambulance trip, and then you end up in a circumstance where you have to pay $1,200 to the ambulance operator. And by the way, this is a real thing because they'll say you didn't approve going into the ambulance, therefore you're not covered. Then that counts the surgery as an approved claim and the ambulance ride as a declined claim, and 1-to-1, that's 50-50 for you that they declined and approved your claims. Now, those aren't equivalent, and to be 100% clear, there are many an instance where they don't cover the important stuff and they do cover the unimportant stuff, but it goes to show you that a quantitative measure of declines versus non-declines is an imperfect measure of the effectiveness or of the criminality of United Healthcare or any health insurance company. Look, fundamentally, there are two directions that we have to go to in terms of medical care in the United States of America. One of those directions is the government-run system that many countries across the world have some version of, although they vary significantly, or we can go to a system where insurance actually functions as insurance. It is meant to protect you from catastrophic financial loss for major medical issues, but most of the ordinary expenses, your physicals and all that, you pay out of pocket, you shop around, you find price transparency, and these are the only two ways that we can have a sensible system. It is our hybrid system that creates all these different problems for average everyday people, because all of a sudden insurance is covering you from cradle to grave, or at least cradle to Medicare, and that just doesn't make any sense because that's not how insurance companies are supposed to function. They're not supposed to cover you for ordinary, regular, predictable expenses. They're supposed to cover you for the extraordinary, the surprise expense, to insure you against financial loss. But again, we can have conversations about the healthcare system without actually resorting to murdering people who work in the current healthcare system. And that's really the point and the reason why I'm so angry at all of these people pandering to their audience's hatred and anger and all that, because what this is going to result in is people attempting to be copycats. And one of the things that I find absolutely disgusting is all these different various creators who definitely 100% will never go out and act out what they advocate for in the real world, but they set the most vulnerable, the most mentally unstable members of their audience up for failure to throw their own lives away, even though they have no intention of ever doing anything similar themselves. So yeah, if you hear a creator, anybody praising this guy, talking about how, well, when people aren't given a chance, this is how they have to step up. Well, this is actually worthwhile because it could result in positive change. Ask them why they don't care enough to step up and throw their own lives away like this Luigi Mangione guy did. Because make no mistake about it, nothing will change in the healthcare system because of his actions, but he will go to prison for the rest of his life. He will suffer in prison for the rest of his life, just like any other individual who tries to replicate this heinous act. And again, I will emphasize, the punishment for denying healthcare claims is not to be murdered in the streets. Not paying for somebody's issue is not the same thing as killing that person. Again, think about all the times that you saw a commercial that said just $1 a day could keep a poor African alive. Are you murdering people every time you don't give those dollars by this logic? But in reality, what is murder is murder. That's the crazy thing about this, is that the left will call everything, including words, including actions in an economy, murder, but then when murder actually happens, they somehow lose their gumption. They somehow lose their ability to have a moral stance. And look, I know I said the left, but there are some people on the right that also agree with this. And again, like I said earlier, you got to tell me the limiting principle. You have to tell me how many people have to die, have to be murdered in order to get to your better world, in order to get to your utopia. I think the answer is none. I don't think it's worth it at all, but you're making the counter case, so let's hear your stupid argument. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to be angry that I have a clear mind on the morality of this issue, but you know what? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the fact that Luigi is not a hero. Stop praising him. Till next time.